Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. What's going on, brother?
Very well. I'm looking at myself on this video, and I could do with a tan. I look a bit white.
You are white for yourself. I mean, this is my tan that I always walk around with, and I grew up by the beach my whole life, so I don't tan, which is it's a sore subject for me.
Yeah, I know.
But
You told me many stories about that. Funny story.
it's funny. I could tell you story after story after story, but that's not what the guys want to hear about. So, Tim, you brought up something offline before we hit the button here. Why don't you dive into it?
Okay. So, guys, what I want to talk to you about, you probably don't know this. Well, you won't know this unless you've got a camera somewhere in my house. For the past few weeks, I've been going through, how do you describe it? I've been feeling funky, been feeling a little bit off. For me, anyway. Like my mood has been rather erratic, and it reminds me of, a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, Doug, just before the Powerful Man came about. Now, obviously, this time around, at this point in time, I have certain tools and awareness, so I was able to navigate it differently. But usually what I've done in the past, so just to paint the scene, so I'm absolutely crystal clear for the people listening or watching, when I say my mood's been funky, what usually happens in this space is I become more erratic. I can be quite up and down, happy and then frustrated and then sad and then excited and then, whole roller coaster of emotions. And in the past, what I would have done is I would have taken it out on Amelia, usually. Not intentionally, but it would have just come out in that way because, she's the person closest to me and, it just tends to be the way sometimes. And I would have tried all sorts to really push the feelings down, push the unease that I'm experiencing further down so I can get away from it. And that might have meant I might have drank more alcohol, watched porn or worked longer, gone to the gym, all sorts of different things I would have used in order to just get out of feeling uncomfortable. But this time, I didn't do that. And I first learned this lesson, several years ago. And instead of choosing to try and drown out the noise inside that was going on for me, I chose to lean into it and to be with it, right? To be with the frustration, to be with the anger, to be with the annoyance, to be with the happiness, to be with to be with it all, and just lean in and ask, what is going on? Like, why am I feeling this? Why am I frustrated right now? What do I want? What's bubbling up? And really start to just be with it and not force any particular answer to arrive right here and now, right? And instead just let the journey play out. And I first did this a few years ago, about 6 years ago. And it's how the Powerful Man came about. I was feeling the pull for something bigger, something greater back then. I had a fitness business, as you know, Doug. And I'd set it up so it didn't really need me. If you can believe it, Doug, I set some systems up. Set it up so it didn't really need me. So I could just create space to see what this simmering was like. It's kind of like a pan, right? There's water in a pan. It's simmering up, and it starts to boil over. Now, that simmering is only going to happen for so long until all the water evaporates. It's kind of the same with the lessons that we are being delivered when that pan is simmering. If we choose to pay attention to the pan and look into the pan, you'll realize there's something gorgeous in there cooking. But if you choose to ignore the pan and let it boil over and simmer and splash out, the thing in there that's cooking never really ends up being a meal. It never really ends up being anything, right? So a few years ago, when I first, became aware of the pan and created the space, what came out of it was the Powerful Man. I won't dive into how that came about, but what came out of it was the Powerful Man, and an amazing thing, right? It wasn't a conscious idea to build a business in the men's space, if you will, quote unquote. And I've been through these cycles at various times since then, 2 or 3 times. And I'm in that space again, or I've been in that space again the past few weeks. But obviously, once you've been through something, you can start to tell the signs, right? And just like before, I was able to tell the signs and I chose to lean in. And what's come out of this over the past week, really, as I've started to come out of the other side, it's kind of like going into a tunnel, right? And you go into the tunnel, it's all dark, you don't know where you're going. And then it feels uncomfortable. You don't have to go a bit faster or slow down. When will it end? And then you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then you come out of the tunnel and you're on the other side of the mountain. And it's green and there's blue skies and the roads are winding and looking down into the ocean. And it's a gorgeous view. It's kind of like that. And the big thing that has come out of all of this, the big lesson really, apart from leaning in, is to find the inspiration, especially during times like this. And I did a live into the workplace, into the brotherhood, into the community a few days ago, talking about the importance of finding the inspiration during challenging times, right? Because it just so happens that, COVID started happening and stuff around this time. I was already going through this roller coaster of emotions before it happened. And it timed so well because by default, it then led me to focusing in on the inspiration, on the vision, on the next step, if you will, which just so happened to be very timely with this. And as I shared this story with the men in the community, talking about the importance of finding inspiration amidst the pain and the chaos and tuning into the inspiration and the joy and following it just one step at a time, like a cookie trail, just following it, boom, 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 without needing to speed it up, without needing to force it to look a certain way or to be something it's not. For me personally, the point at which I arrive is a complete abandon of, I do not give a F where this leads. I don't care where this leads because I know it's going to be somewhere great if I continue in honoring this simmering that's inside of me. Whenever I've honored it in the past, it's always turned to something fantastic. So instead of holding on and needing and forcing, the path of force we've spoken about a lot of times, and operating from the outside in, this truly is operating from the inside out when you're able to do this. So I think at this moment in time, the reason why I wanted to share this with the guys is I think it's so relevant and so important that despite all the chaos that's going on, right, all the chaos that's going on around us, because there are people right now that are going to be found out, right? People that, have been masquerading as, to be certain people within society, having, power, but we're drawing power from the home or the status or the car or money or whatever. And right now they may be concerned that, holy crap, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose me because they've placed so much of their identity and who they are and their self-worth onto what they have and how they look and appear, which is false. It's false power. Whereas the people during this time that are able to cultivate deep roots within themselves, to really be in tune with who they are and what it is they desire by tuning into this idea of inspiration and following it and let it unfold, they're the people that are going to rise during this time. They're the people that are going to rise, and they're going to rise big. Whereas the other people, they're going to fall, and they'll fall hard. I'll let you come in now, because I know you sat there patiently, and I could go on and on and on and on and on.
Do it. You're on a roll, man. This is good stuff for everybody right now. The one question I can see guys asking that are either watching this or listening to this on the podcast is, okay, great, but you don't understand. I got a family. I've got this. My job's at risk. My business is at risk, Tim. And you're asking me to jump into the unknown. What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's mine's and everyone's is unknown, right? When is it ever known? It might feel more certain at certain times in history or in your life, but there's always been an element of uncertainty. Sure, it might have been turned up right now, in which case it's even more important to lead into this. There are going to be some lessons for people, some fantastic lessons right now that are being delivered for people if they choose to learn them. Some people are going to choose to get their head down during this time and power through, which in some instances will mean that they'll completely miss an opportunity to learn something about themselves, about their business, because they're going to go through, they're going to go into the problem, trying to solve it from the same level of thinking that they were at before, right? That's the game's changed. So you can't try and play it with the same rule book that we're using before. The game's changed. So you either choose to accept that the game's changed and take a moment to pause, not to ignore what's going on, not to delay taking action in your business, not to bury your head in the sand. It's none of those things. It's quite the opposite. It's sticking your head right above the precipice for yourself to see what's really there for you. Because this is an opportunity, a huge opportunity. Competitors in your marketplace are more than likely going to choose to preserve what they've got, which by default means they're going to be looking at their business and their life through the lens of preservation and survival. And we both know that nothing ever stays the same. So if you try and hold on to what you've got, really, you're causing it to shrink because you're not in a growth mindset. Whereas if you're willing to just take a moment to lean in to whatever's coming up for you right now, or maybe there's nothing coming up for you. I don't know. For me, there was before this even came about. So regardless of the situation of COVID or whatever, I think an important lesson here to take moving forward is whenever this arises in you, whenever the unease arises, lean in. Don't distract yourself by picking up your mobile phone, by going on social media, by reaching for the beer, for the cocktail, by eating food. Don't distract yourself. One of the biggest skill sets you could learn right now is to be able to be with yourself. Mm. Because if you're able to be with yourself during this time and by default, then be with the unease and lean into it and take the lessons from it, you're going to start playing the game with a different rule book. Maybe it's the rule book that teaches you how to thrive during this time rather than the rule book of survival. I know for myself, and look at the guys in the community, Doug. They're thriving, right? And we're sharing these exact same concepts with them, and they're actually applying it. And we've got guys that are even growing the businesses, that are leading their family, their businesses, their communities in ways that they never did before, because they've chosen to lean in. They've chosen to rise during this time, take the lessons, write a new rule book, not even be given a rule book. They've chosen to write their own rule book and win. So someone says, I've got a family, I've got kids, coming back full circle. I've got family, I've got kids, I don't have time. Well, it's kind of like the famous saying in health, right? You either make time for your wellness or you'll make time for your illness.
So true.
Which one do you want to make time for?
And it's so true right now when you look at it and what you're going to do. And this applies to all areas. What's bubbling up for you guys in the area of your relationship with your wife, your spouse? What's coming up there? Are you just settling? Are you satisfied, or something bubbling up that you want to change? And that change could be just having good conversation, right, Tim? But that change could also be maybe you want to get into some fun stuff, right? Or, maybe it's S&M for you. Maybe it's all kinds of things. It doesn't have to all be about sex and intimacy, but it could be. And maybe this is a good time to allow that to bubble up and flow through you and try some new things. Or maybe this is like, you posted in the Brotherhood today, or actually there was a general channel with all the men about things that are bubbling up for you and what you're doing about it. You're taking proactive measures to be ahead of things. And not only to be ahead of things, but to really just, like you're talking about, follow your heart, follow your soul, whatever you want to call it, and really dive in and do something about it. I think that's really the difference here. I mean, the two things you're talking about, Tim, that I'm hearing you talk about, and we've talked about this, I guess, before, is one is you're listening to the voice that's within inside of you, and you're honoring it. The second thing you're doing is you're taking action on it, right? It's one thing to, and I think a lot of people in the spiritual new age world will listen to themselves, but not do anything. And I think a lot of people who are in the business community will do a lot of stuff, but won't listen to what's going on inside of them. And I think what you're talking about right now is the marriage of both of those, really. Does that sound
Mm.
about right?
I love it. Yeah, really well said. I mean, like I said, I've gone through this experience, this journey, whatever, at various times before, maybe 2 or 3 times in the past 6 years or so. And anytime I ignore it and tell myself I'm too busy to listen, and I end up struggling, I end up unhappy, or I end up, something happens. It's almost like this disease, right? There's disease in my life. It's not in my body, it's in my life. There's unrest, there's unease. And that's where I start to live out of alignment with values, and things start to slow down. And it's frustrating because there's unrest, right? This is why things like the Alpha Rising Chime routine and the weekly review, everything's so important to me. So I can stay connected to myself. Otherwise, if you don't have those practices, it's like going to the gym, getting the reps in. You've got to get the reps in. And it's a game of awareness. It's so much easier when you're in the game. And so I've gone through these cycles. It really is a cycle. It's kind of like how a snake sheds skin. Or it's kind of like the caterpillar that goes into the chrysalis and emerges as a butterfly. It's what happens. And if you look at nature, you have winter where the leaves fall off the trees and the plants die and things wilt. And then you have spring where things start to rebirth and come back to life. And you've got summer where everything's flourishing. You've got autumn where it calms down again. Just like the ocean, right? The ocean comes and goes in waves that are relevant to the cycle of the moon. Everything in life occurs within cycles. And it's the same with us. It's the same with business. It's the same with industry. Same with economy. It works in cycles. The female menstrual cycle. There's so many cycles we could talk about and mention here. So for you as an individual, or for us, to ignore the cycle within ourselves that we are going through in our own growth and evolution, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you, how could you do that? And, I get it, right? Because before I became aware of this, I was so busy believing that was the way for me to become successful, quote unquote, and then I'd be happy, and then I'd be this, and then I'd be that. So I get it. It's a complete mindset shift, but also one that can be really easy as well.
Absolutely. So what are a couple takeaways these guys can take and take action now?
I would invite you to look at where you can turn down the noise. So if things are bubbling up for you right now, maybe you have decided to start drinking more alcohol in an evening because it's okay, because you're going through this cycle and this stress at work. Maybe you've decided that it's okay to go on your phone more because you're at home more. So by default, you're with your wife and kids more, so you're going to go on your phone more. Maybe you've decided to drink more caffeine. Maybe you've decided to eat more food. Maybe you've decided to work out less. Whatever pattern has started to occur right now, or whatever pattern's occurring for you that's causing you to distract yourself from what is bubbling up within you, I would invite you to become aware of that and turn down the noise. And then the second thing is to start to lean into the unrest that you are feeling and just be with it. Regardless of how uncomfortable it is, regardless of how your mind's going to want to take yourself away, journal. Get out a pen, get out a pad, and just ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? and just see what comes up and just write it down. Don't judge it. Don't make logic of it. Don't do any of that stuff. Just write it all down and keep going and be with it. And be with it until the unrest turns to inspiration. The heaviness will turn to lightness. And you'll feel noticeably different, but you cannot rush that phase.
Absolutely beautiful and well said. Gentlemen, as always, we invite you to take action. And of course, if you're interested in getting more training, go over to thealphareset.com. That's thealphareset.com, where you can learn like we've helped other men just like you. That's a wrap for us here at the Powerful Man Show. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.